Well, I think we're going to start. It's 3 minutes after, and we would like to have most of the hour. So welcome everybody to National Council of Jewish Women, Arizona, general monthly meeting, but tonight it's a special event, pre-election. As all of you undoubtedly know, we are a social justice advocacy organization. And of late, our advocacy has been dominated by the two topics in the headlines: access to reproductive health care, and of course, voting and the integrity of the vote. And all of the lies up and down the ballot, the stolen election mythology, the conspiracy theories that have been rampant across the country and especially in Arizona are on everyone's mind. Sadly, however, according to a New York Times Siena College poll that was released today, while voters overwhelmingly believe that American democracy is under threat, they seem remarkably apathetic about that danger, and few are calling it the nation's most pressing problem. Well, the price of milk will not matter if we live under an authoritarian government. And as somebody recently said, the price of milk won't matter if your partner is miscarrying and an emergency room physician will not manage that miscarriage. So we need to be sure that we have all of our rights secured, and the only way we are going to do that is through our vote. So tonight we are going to explore how safe our vote will be in Arizona. And we're delighted that all of you are here to attend, and we encourage you to participate. I am very grateful to our program directors, Anita Malik, our board director of advocacy, and a former congressional candidate herself, and Jody Liggett, our legislative and policy consultant, founder of the Arizona Center for Women's Advancement. And I am going to turn this evening's program over to Anita.
Thank you, Sivia, and thank you for everyone who has joined us for this special meeting. Almost 50 of you here tonight, and hopefully some more will trickle in. We are very excited to have this conversation about the myths and the facts about voting security. So during election season, normally all of our focus is on the candidates. Who's polling ahead of who? Who's attacking who? Who's where on what issues? Right? That it's easy for us, however, to forget about the officials, the teams of people, the volunteers that are really behind those ballots. It's easy because unintentionally we're focused on what? Just getting out to vote for our candidates. And those tireless workers that are protecting our democracy, those election officials like we have joining us today, they usually don't make the headlines, which normally we would say that's a good thing, right? We want them just focused on their job, and Mr. Richer agrees with us. But over the last couple election cycles, we all know, and notably in 2020, that really has changed. Election officials throughout our country, and certainly here in Arizona, as we've seen, have taken center stage because the attacks on our election security and our election systems has been like something we've never seen before. And so local officials, like Maricopa County Recorder Stephen Richer, who has so graciously joined us here tonight, so thank you for that, have had to not only stand up and fight back against outrageous lies here in Arizona, the outrageous audit, to protect our democracy, but they've had to stand up to protect their own employees, their own teams. His own staff have received threats. Volunteers have received threats. And so we're so grateful for him for being that voice for democracy and for the safety and security of our election system. So I think it's fair to say in this intro that, Stephen, you've had a very eventful time so far as the 30th recorder of the Maricopa County. This is one of the largest counties in the country. But when you took office in January 2021, you came in well prepared with your experience as an attorney and in business. Stephen holds a bachelor's degree from Tulane University, a master's degree from the University of Chicago, and a JD from the University of Chicago Law School. So with that, I'd like to thank County Recorder Richard for his service in the defense and for our democracy. And that is why we are here tonight. I thank him for joining us, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. That was lovely. Have you done some public speaking before?
Just a wee bit, maybe.
All right. Yeah, you should consider it. You're good at it. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate thanks to the NCJW. Thank you to Jody for the invitation. Really appreciate it. Love opportunities to spread the word about the security, the accessibility, the transparency of our election system. Really appreciate the opportunity to have you all take this information and spread it with your various communities, spread it with your neighbors, encourage them to get involved, encourage them to contact my office, encourage them to learn more, encourage them to go to trusted sources of information. So thank you. It's a privilege to be here. My name is Stephen Richer, as mentioned, Maricopa County Recorder. Prior to this, business person, attorney, grew up in Utah. I'm actually Jewish. I'm one of 5,000 Jews in Utah, or was one of 5,000 Jews in Utah. We had one synagogue in the Salt Lake Valley. It was in downtown Salt Lake, and it was originally Reform, and then it became conservative. So I guess that's what my family became. Because, you know, when there's one show in town, you know, it's good to be a monopoly, I guess. I'm sure there was a Chabad house. There's always a Chabad house somewhere, but my parents didn't visit that. So I moved around a lot. I lived in New Orleans. I lived in DC. I lived in Chicago twice. I lived in Philly. Lived in Hermosillo, Mexico. And then some of the family had started making their way to Arizona. My grandparents had moved to Scottsdale. My sister's a hardcore U of A gal who moved to Tucson in 2001 and has never looked back, and thinks that the world revolves around the University of Arizona Wildcats, which I've been telling her that, you know, ASU has something to offer here in Maricopa County, and she doesn't like that. So I moved out here in very late 2015. It's been absolutely wonderful. We're so happy to make this our forever home. My wife joined me in 2017. We actually met at 1Ls at University of Chicago. She was practicing law at a couple big law firms, but she is now a federal prosecutor, and she has an exciting, eventful life. But if we're honest about threats to our lives and threats to our security, we don't really worry that much about the cartels, the drug traffickers, the weapons traffickers, the large financial crime people that my wife prosecutes. Quite frankly, it's been my world that has been more eventful, has been more targeted. And as Anita said, that's really an indictment of where we're at. And if there's anything I would ask of the world is, you know, even if you're not going to dismiss all the lies, even if you're not going to be an evangelist for truth, just bring down the rhetoric, bring down the temperature, because this is not good for our civil discourse, for our democracy. Our democracy, that's at the heart of what I do. My office has three main statutory functions. It's the recorder for the county. So we record all public documents. Most of these documents relate to real estate. So when interest rates are low, we'll see more recordings in my office. We record over 1 million documents every single year. That was especially true in 2021 when we had very high numbers. The right to vote used to be tied to othership of property, which explains the otherwise explains the otherwise sort of weird combination within my office of the other two statutory responsibilities, which is voter registration and election administration. So voter registration, we have about 2.4, a little over 2.4 million registered voters in Maricopa County. We're divided roughly 34% independent, 34% 34% Republican, 31% Democrat, and Libertarians fill in a little bit of the gaps. So we're really a dynamic, exciting county. We are the second largest voting jurisdiction in the United States, behind only Los Angeles County. But unlike Los Angeles County, we're incredibly competitive. Democrats have won Maricopa County recently. Republicans have won Maricopa County recently. Republicans have and Democrats in different races have won in the same year. Of course, we all know this. This has become a much discussed national or phenomenon, even in national media. And the third component is election administration. And what an exciting time to be talking about elections in Arizona, in Maricopa County, because we're underway. We've got not just the spotlight of Arizona, because we make up 62% of the voting population in Arizona. Maricopa County, 62% of the voting population is here in Maricopa County. But we're a story nationally, because we could determine who controls the United States Senate. We could determine who controls the United States House. And in 2024, we're going to be, I promise you, we will be one of the 5 states that they will look at to determine who's the next president of the United States. But we're also a story internationally, and this is something that is truly mind-boggling to me. I have probably had media requests from, I'll say, 40 countries in the last 2 weeks alone, because the narrative about democracy has never been more poignant than it is right now. And when people want to discuss that narrative, they look at Arizona. When they look at Arizona, they look at Maricopa County, because Maricopa County, for better or for worse, has been the focal point of the conversation on where goes American democracy. And yes, the rest of the world looks at it because it's a fascination, and it produces some really sensational media, but because we still are the beacon of democracy to the world. When you look at the women in Iran, or you look at the Ukrainian fighters, they still carry with them American flags, because that represents democracy. And so they are looking at a state like Arizona to have a good measurement of where is democracy today. And if democracy is in retreat in Arizona, and if democracy is in retreat in the United States, then I promise you that message will reverberate throughout the world. So no pressure, but we could determine the fate of democracy in the world here in Arizona. So, but we're up to it. So I have the utmost confidence. Regarding the nuts and bolts of elections, we are as my colleague Supervisor Bill Gates said, we're a have it your way, which I think was stolen from Burger King. We're a have it your way voter place. You can vote in the comfort of your home. You can mail back your ballot. 79% of registered voters in Maricopa County are on the active early voting list, whereby they are automatically mailed a vote for mailed a ballot packet for every election in which they are registered. You can vote early in person by showing up to one of our voting locations. We've opened 12 voting locations. We will eventually get up to 223 voting locations in Maricopa County. Or you can vote in person on election day. And again, you can go to one of 223 voting locations. We are and have been a voter-centric state for some time. We've run successful elections. We've run successful elections by mail. We've run successful elections with in-person voting. Have we had challenges? Have we had mistakes? You betcha. But by and large, Arizona elections are well done. And they're elections that afford opportunity, and they're safe, and they're secure. Like I said, we've been doing mail elections since 1992. This isn't just something that we invented and had to immediately implement in the face of the pandemic, but it's something that we've been getting better at time after time. Regarding those voting locations, we've recently changed to a vote center model, whereby you can vote at any single one of those voting locations. So it used to be that you would have to show up to your assigned precinct. And some people appreciated sort of the, maybe in days when Maricopa County was smaller, sort of the neighborly feel of that. But we all know that the nature of the game has changed and that many people vote by mail, and that for some people it might be confusing, or it might be more convenient to vote where you work or vote where you drop off your kids. And so you can go to any one of the 223 voting locations. You simply check in. It has a live real-time connection to our voter registration database. It will make sure that you haven't previously returned a mail ballot packet or have voted at a different voting location. It will print you the correct style. There are over 9,000 ballot styles for this general election. Why 9,000? Well, think of all of we love voting on stuff in Arizona. We have lots of stuff up for elections. So think of the 10 initiatives, think of all the intersecting water districts, school districts, supervisorial districts, congressional districts, legislative districts. And that's how you get to 9,000 different ballot styles. Well, no problem. We know where you live. We've plotted it. It'll pull up, you'll print that, and you'll be able to vote there. A few key deadlines. Some of you have probably already received your mail ballot if you're a vote by mail person. For some of you, it will be coming in the next day or two. You can track your ballot. You can see when we've mailed it out. You can text join to 628-683. That's join to 628-683. Or you can go to beballotready.vote, beballotready.vote, and you can log on to your individual dashboard. Now, as I mentioned, we have 12 voting locations currently open. We're going to ramp that up to 223 in time for Election Day, but we'll open more and more gradually. And the website for that is locations.maricopa.vote. It's a dynamic website whereby you can enter your address to pull up the nearest locations to you. You can also see wait times. We were very pleased within the August election. We didn't have significant lines for all of the days. And most of Election Day, we had wait times of less than 10 minutes. Only at the very end of the day, at a few locations, did we have longer wait times. So that's something that we're proud of. We're going to start tabulating ballots on October 24th. So as your ballot comes back, if you're a mail voter, if you have that packet and you've put it in that green envelope and you've signed that green envelope, you can mail that back. You can drop it off at a voting location, or you can drop it off at one of our drop boxes. They're all secure. The only difference between those forms of dropping it off is that if you are going to drop it off at a USPS drop box or a USPS box, please mail it by November 1st, because we are a receipt state, meaning if you postmark your ballot on Election Day, not good enough. It has to get to us on Election Day. And so we ask that you mail it back at least a week in advance to make sure 100% security that the USPS gets it to us by November 8th, 7 p.m. The last day to request a mail ballot. So if you're somebody who's not on the active early voting list, but you want a one-time mail packet, you can make that request. If you're somebody who has spilled coffee on your ballot and gotten all over it, that's okay. You can request another mail packet. What we'll do is we'll automatically deactivate the barcode on your return envelope in that first packet, and we'll send out a new packet. So October 28th. And as mentioned before, November 1st is the last day that we recommend in terms of sending it back through USPS. Few general election updates. Our voter registration deadline closed on October 12th. We had 25,000 voter registration forms come in the last 2 days. So that was exciting. People made a final strong push to be able to be registered for the November 8th election. We've processed all of those. All of those people who registered by October 12th are eligible to participate in this November general election. We performed later that week a logic and accuracy test with the Secretary of State's office. This is designed to test our tabulation equipment. What a logic and accuracy test is it's a stack, it's a deck of ballots that have been marked and that have been predetermined but haven't been told to us. So the Secretary of State has the answer key, so to speak. They come, they feed them into our tabulation equipment. They make sure that our tabulation equipment yields the results that it should yield. This is overseen by the political parties and it's signed off by the political parties. Now, this test is required before every single election. We also have to be federally certified by the Elections Assistance Commission. We have to be state certified by the Secretary of State's office. After the election, we also do a post-election hand count audit with the political parties. So the political parties will sit in groups of 3, bipartisan groups of 3, and they will hand count a statistically significant number of ballots. And then they will take that number and they will match it to the machine count to make sure that the machines were accurately tabulating the ballots. This is done after every statewide and federal election. In the 2020 election, it was done. They counted 47,000 votes. After the election, they matched those to the machine count. It matched 100%. Same for the August primary that we just had. This is done by the political parties. A few other things. Let's see what's to come. Results. We can begin tabulating, but we cannot produce, and nobody knows any results until 8 p.m. on election night. For the August primary, at 8 p.m., we released the results of every single early ballot that we had received by Sunday before Election Day, Tuesday. So for those ballots, we had taken it in, we'd scanned the barcode, we'd taken a picture of your signature, an image capture of your signature on that green return envelope. We compare that signature with all the signatures that we have in your file. We make sure it matches. Then it goes to a signature audit queue. Then it goes to a bipartisan ballot processing team. And that's when one Republican, one Democrat, they take the ballot out of the envelope and the secret ballot is born. They make sure that that ballot is the right style. They make sure that it's not damaged, that it's not torn, that it's not had coffee spilled on it. They flatten it. They put it in stacks of 200. All of this is documented and it's moved to our tabulation room. After we posted those results, which accounted for about 70% of the ultimate results, we then loaded all of the votes that were cast in person on election day. So the whole conversation about these darn Sharpies, I think you probably have all heard that. The reason behind that is because on election day, if you vote in person, that is the only day in which you can feed your ballot directly into the tabulation machine. Now, the mini tabulators at the 223 voting locations, they like felt tip pens. Why do they like felt tip pens? Well, felt tip pens dry faster. And for ballpoint pens, they leave a little bit of residue. And so that can eventually build up on the optical scanner of the mini tabulators. And that can cause us to have to send out a technician to clean off the gunk. And of course, that would ultimately cause a line. Fortunately, that didn't happen despite some attempted disruptions in the August primary. So what we do at the end of the day is we take the memory drives from those mini tabulators at all of the different voting locations, and they all come to our central facility and we load them into our server. That represented about another 15% of the vote. So by 12:30 a.m. on Wednesday morning, we had 85% of the eventual result loaded. What remained were those early ballots in those green envelopes that were dropped off on election day or dropped off on Monday before election day. 122,000 people for the August primary dropped off an early ballot, that green early ballot, on election day. Governor Ducey did it. My neighbor Ruben Gallego did it. God bless them all. It's not the easiest way for us to handle these things. It's not the fastest way to get the results, but your vote still counts. Every single valid vote counts as long as you get it to us before 7 p.m. But what we don't do is we don't skip the signature review process. We don't skip the barcode scanning process. If you drop it off on election day, we still have to do that. And that's why we process those and we tabulate those, and you see those come out on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. On Friday, we had 99% of the results posted. The only thing remaining after Friday were ballots that needed to be cured. This is what happens when we originally say, your signature doesn't look like your signature that we have on file. So we will text message you, we will call you, we will email you, we will mail you, we will do everything possible to get in touch with you to make sure that that was in fact you. We have 5 business days to do that curing process. We've committed a lot of resources to it because this is how we guarantee that, yes, we have a front end screen to verify your identity, but we also don't unduly disenfranchise valid voters of people who are legitimately trying to cast a ballot. That's a lot of information, a lot of nuts and bolts. I appreciate you letting me throw that at you there, but let me talk more just broadly in closing, is that this is a well thought out process that has been improved upon year after year, that is worked by bipartisan team members without a single fail point, that has documentation at every step, that is monitored by 24/7 video cameras that you can watch from our website, and that is tested both before the election and after the election. And I'm an analytical person. And so I ask you, don't take this on faith, or you can take it on faith, but that's not my MO. But ask your questions here, or come see it later, because I'd love to show you more about our system. And this is a system that is well designed and getting better every single day. And I can tell you with 100% certainty that you can have confidence in the accuracy of the tabulation of the results and the accuracy of the ballots. I can't guarantee that you will like the outcomes. I don't always like the outcomes. I vote for a lot of losers. Losers in the sense that they lose elections, which does not mean, it might even be inversely correlated in terms of their character. But I can guarantee you that in Maricopa County, we're going to have a fair election, we're going to have an accessible election, we're going to have a transparent election, and we're going to have a secure election. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I know we probably have tons of questions. And in the interest of getting to everybody, we have over 50 people on this call, so I'll try and see where the hands are, but also feel free to put something in the chat. And John Kay, I see you. Why don't you go ahead and ask your question? And you can unmute. There you go.
There you go. I worked the primary, and there were more than a few. Actually, there were quite a few people who asked me if this equipment was Dominion equipment. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't know, to be honest with you. And I saw the logo of the company that makes the tabulator, and I said, I believe that's it. Later on, I realized that it was on the top, kind of embossed in there, but not really easy to see. I have seen the new tabulators, and a blind person could see it with a cane. I mean, it's there. So the question I have is, how would we deal with it if they don't want to scan it? My thought is you put it in section number 3 and explain to them that's where all the ballots that cannot be scanned, and that they'd be entered manually when they get to the drop-off place or to the office. Thoughts on that, please?
So we do use Dominion tabulation equipment. We use Dominion tabulation equipment since 2019. We've actually used Dominion tabulation equipment in the past as well, but the current iteration and current version, we went out to public bid in 2019. The county received 3 bids from all from reputable national tabulation companies. The Dominion software and hardware includes the central count tabulators. It includes the software to design the various ballot styles that I talked about. And it also includes, yes, those mini tabulators at the different voting locations. You're talking about in the blue bin at a voting location on election day, if for whatever reason the the mini tabulator at the voting location cannot read the ballot, then yes, it can go into drawer 3, which then either will get transposed onto a new ballot by a bipartisan team, or will just get read by one of our central count tabulators. That happened only to, I think, about 300 ballots out of the 108,000 that were voted on election day for the August primary. So it's something that we don't want to have happen, but is a fail-safe method for ensuring that every single vote is counted. Regarding the sort of the reputation of Dominion voting system, I think this is one of the great tragedies. I'm somebody who comes from the private sector. I think that the creation of new businesses and jobs is truly a blessing to the world. Dominion was doing that. I think that, I know that people with full knowledge that Dominion had no connection to Hugo Chavez or any of the other far-flung theories. It was unfairly sullied. I think it was Jonathan Swift said that a lie can travel around the world in a second, but the truth comes out slowly, or something much more poetic than that. But so Dominion is slowly rehabilitating its reputation. It is also, and has so far, successfully survived motions to dismiss against Fox, against One American News Network, against Newsmax, against Mike Lindell, against Rudy Giuliani, against Sidney Powell. So they are on the warpath for defamation. But more importantly, I'm not asking you to take Dominion on faith. No, it's a machine. I'm asking you to believe in the test and to believe in the science behind the test. And when we run these test ballots, and when we do a statistically significant hand count audit before and after, that's what I'm asking you to recognize. And those tests aren't done by Dominion employees. They're done by either the Secretary of State or the political parties themselves.
Okay, if someone says, well, I will not feed this into a Dominion tabulator, because I'll tell you right now, a couple of the people who approached me on that, when I showed them the logo of whatever company made the stuff, they said, good, because I would not insert my ballot into a Dominion tabulator. I would not be terribly surprised if I don't run across at least a few of those. So once again, would putting it in the number 3 slot be something for someone who just says, I will not use a Dominion machine?
You can do that. The reality is it will be tabulated by one of our central count tabulators, one of the tabulators at our central facility, which are also Dominion tabulation equipment. We hand count audit, but we do not hand count ballots in anywhere in Arizona. We use Dominion tabulation equipment. It's tested, it's verified, it's confirmed by the political parties. I recognize that. And John, thank you. I should have begun by saying thank you so much for being a worker at one of our voting locations. I know that sometimes people, are looking to have sort of a confrontational engagement, and we've been working with our very wonderful poll workers on that. And I will talk to the team and sort of alert them that we might want to have some talking points for people at the voting locations if they come across this particular question.
Great. We have really 2 questions. One is a really simple one. Who opens the ballots? Are they opened by hand or machine?
So importantly, for election day ballots that are voted in person, the voter himself or herself feeds it directly into the mini tabulator at the voting location. That constitutes a distinct minority in Maricopa County. For all the early ballots that return in their either green or white envelopes, only once they are signature verified are they then sliced by a slicing machine that just slices the top of the ballot. but then they are removed by that bipartisan ballot processing team. They sit across from each other. I would be wearing a red lanyard. Anita, unless her party has changed since I last checked in with her 2 years ago, would be wearing a blue lanyard. We'd be sitting across from each other. We'd be taking these out in stacks of 50. We'd be counting them in a manner that's prescribed by our staff, and we'd be checking each other. And we'd be making sure that as soon as we take that out, we make sure that it's the right ballot style that was intended for that voter. And we make sure that there's only one ballot packet, that there's only one ballot per envelope in there.
Great. Another question along these lines. Are you concerned about disruption from partisan election observers? And what are your plans to keep voters and staff from being threatened?
Elections are inherently emotional. Anyone who participates in the process closely knows that. And I mean, you're really, for candidates and for those people who work on campaigns, they put their sweat and tears and occasionally even their blood, paper cuts and stuff like that into elections. And I think that especially with the very weighty issues that we're grappling with as a society today, it's just heightened the emotion that's involved in it. So yeah, and then you throw into the mix, all these mis and disinformation about election administration, and we're certainly aware of that. We have worked with our poll inspectors, who's the top person at every voting location, on de-escalation techniques. We have worked very closely with local law enforcement, with county law enforcement and state law enforcement. We have done a lot to increase police presence in the vicinity, not stationed at the voting locations, but nearby on call if needed. We have done a lot to secure our central facility, whether it's gates or additional badge access or additional cameras or additional security personnel at the voting location. I will tell you that if somebody puts a ballot in the wrong drawer, we can undo that. As long as the person's honest about it, we can back that out and we can figure out how to resolve that. And I don't know about you, but I've made my mistakes. In fact, I made one that just got written about. It's a small mistake, but it was written about last week. So that happens. Somebody getting hurt would be, it would be crushing, and it would be a black eye on Arizona, and it would be a black eye on the United States. People not being able to vote in safety, people not being able to tabulate in safety. That's not United States. Well, it is United States stuff historically, but I don't want it to be part of United States stuff today. And I think the trajectory of the United States has been upward and upward and upward on this front, and I don't want to see that reversed.
Great. One quick question: is it too late to volunteer to be a poll worker?
No, so they are all paid positions, and we are at 85% of positions recruited. What we are primarily recruiting for now is those last positions, which are the 1 and 2 day positions, people who work at voting locations that are just open on either just election day or on Monday and Tuesday. The website to get information about the different locations or the different positions is getinvolved.maricopa.vote. That's getinvolved.maricopa.vote. Or you can connect with Jody and you can email me. I welcome that. We've had a wonderful showing from people who are newly interested, and we have a very high yield from our August primary, which we're very happy about because we like returning people. They've had some experience, they're known entities, we can trust them, it's good. And so, but yes, would love to receive your interest, and thank you.
All right, we've got a two-parter next. What is it like for you and the supervisors, all but one, to be criticized by fellow Republicans? And talk about the decision to issue a rebuttal to the Senate audit findings, and I'm putting that in air quotes, right, one by one. You rebutted them one by one. I think all of us were so happy that you did that. Can you just talk a little bit about, how you arrived at the decision to do that? And, just personally, I observed the supervisors being so supportive of the staff. Maybe just talk about the culture in Maricopa County, because it seems like it's a little different than other elected bodies.
I love every single one of my colleagues. I really do, and I have a great respect for them, and they are all 100% Team Truth, Team Sanity, Team Elections. That's true of all 5 Board of Supervisors. Yes, 4 of whom are Republicans, 1 of whom is a Democrat. 5 fantastic guys. It's true of positions that have no relationship necessarily to election administration, the assessor, the treasurer, the county school superintendent. Paul Pinzone, who's not the same political party as I am, has been like a big brother to me. He's great. I just like him a lot. And I would only ever say good things about him. And he has done an immense amount of work to ensure the safety of my team and both my permanent staff team and the temporary staff team. So I don't know what's in the water here at Maricopa County, but I like it. Unfortunately, it sometimes feels like Fortress Maricopa, because that's not true of necessarily the political class outside. Well, it's not necessarily. There's nothing necessarily about it. It's not true outside of Maricopa County. How does it feel being a Republican? It stinks. It has been mentally and physically exhausting. It has resulted in a number of lost friendships. It has been really awful. Some days it feels like you get punched in the face. You wake up, you get punched in the face again. You go to work, you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. I don't know how to sugarcoat it, but like the vilest things have been done and said to me, to the board, unfortunately to some of the public public facing team members, to my wife, and some of the leaders, and some of whom are from my own political party. Some of them have encouraged it. Some of them have sowed the seeds of it. And then almost to a person have sat by silently when press reports come out about people being arrested. I've had people, just last week, the FBI arrested somebody for making a death threat to Supervisor Hickman. Just last month, the FBI arrested somebody who made a death threat to me. We didn't receive any outpouring of, oh gosh, I didn't realize it had gotten this bad, or maybe we should all sort of tone it down a little bit. It's not good, and I'm really disappointed.
Well, I'll just say, taking a liberty on behalf of certainly everyone on this call, like I said before, we were so proud. It's hard. It's hard for all of us to get on a plane and sit next to a person. They ask you where you're from, and you say Arizona, and they get that look on their face, right? It's horrible. You and the county have made us proud to be from Arizona. We really appreciate that.
You asked about the rebuttal. So I like writing, and I'm still clinging to the probably false notion that, gosh, if I just write this out and I correct and I show and I give them the information, then they'll understand and it'll all be hunky dory. So I've written at least 3 sort of significant publications. I wrote an open letter in August 2021 to Republicans of Arizona, outlining sort of my personal experience with this office, my background. And then the election systems and how I know I can have confidence in the election systems and how I know with certainty that the 2020 election wasn't stolen. Then in January 2022, we released a report that was a line by line, as Jody mentioned, rebuttal of the claims made by the cyber ninjas. And then in, I think, just last month or August of this month, I was censured by the Maricopa County Republican Party for things that were inaccurate. And so it wasn't so much about the censure as it was about inaccuracies in the description of the tabulation process. And so I wrote 17 pages in response to that. I think that it has to be met. It has to be met at every single level, at every single turn. We will continue to do that to anyone who lies about the people and the processes, and especially the integrity of this process. I think it's also important for the historical record. I think that we will get through this moment eventually. I wish it were going to be sooner rather than later. But I think that it's important for when we reflect back on this to have that such that people can understand that this was not the case.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to toggle back into some practical questions. One of us is asking, how come recently, in the past couple of election cycles, it's taken 2 to 3 weeks to get the final results? I know you covered some of that, but specifically, like to lay people who it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why does it take 3 days?
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us a little about that.
So the two big things that Arizona has going on here are, one, we're a close state. If it's a blowout race, all you need is 70% of the results in. Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, they'll all call it, you'll stop caring. Tabulation has always gone on for multiple days. It's just whether or not you stay engaged with it is another matter. And I think for the foreseeable future, races in Arizona will be very quick. In the November 2020 election, there were 200,000 early ballots that were dropped off on election day. We can't retrieve those until after the polls have closed and voters have left. So that's about 8 p.m. They have to be driven in from the various locations throughout the county. That barcode has to be scanned. The image of the signature has to be captured. Then it has to go to a signature review process. And then it goes to that bipartisan ballot processing team. And then it goes to the tabulation room. Now, if you have any mismarks or if you've done any write-ins, then a human has to get involved in that tabulation process. And then I mentioned the cure period before if you have a signature. So if we get a lot like that, then yes, there will be a percentage that will not be available on election night. That will happen over the next few days. And if the race is a very close race, then those votes will continue to matter down to the very last drop, as I suspect they will for this upcoming election. Now, the public policy question that I think the state legislature is going to grapple with in this next session is, which do you value more? Would you rather have a higher percentage of the vote total available on election night? Or do you value more being able to drop off your early ballot on election day or drop it off on Monday? I know for a fact that there will be some state legislators who will say, you have to drop off your early ballot by Friday before election day. And if you haven't dropped off your early ballot then you need to get in line on Tuesday and you need to vote a new ballot and you need to feed it into the mini tabulator at the voting location. Okay, we would have a higher percentage of the votes tabulated on Tuesday election night. That has a trade-off. And so I think that's a fair public policy conversation to engage in. And I think the state legislature will next session.
Great. We only have a few minutes, so I'll just, I think we want the big question at the end to be, you know, what we can do. But can you talk for a minute about, and, you know, maybe you don't understand it either. What is this obsession with hand counting? What?
It's what it is. I think there's this. It's tactile. I'm trying to be respectful because really I think it's a stupid idea without any foundation. But there's this, you know, it's tactile, it's tangible, it's right in front of you. You see it, you understand it. You don't have to, you know, really think about anything. But hand counts would be one, more susceptible to a bad actor, because you would have far more actors involved and your ability to police them. Two, humans are not good at repetitive tasks. Even, do y'all remember when we used to roll the coins instead of just like dumping them in a machine, and you would have the dollar penny rolls, and so, and you, like we would even have to put them in stacks of 5 or 10 because we were not good at even counting to 100 accurately.
Right.
Doing that in a group of 3 is not the path to accuracy, and this has been, you know, scientifically studied. It would be immensely slower. So I mean, we, you know, if there was anything that was good at that came out of the Cyber Ninjas review, it's that it was a 4-month endeavor to count 2 contests, the presidential and the US Senate. We will have over 70 contests on most of the ballots for this November general election. 4 months? So it's a silly idea that I think has found purchase with people who are just trying to sort of throw a stink bomb in the room to mix things up and to make a point about the conversation. So that's the best I can understand it. But if we go back to that, then, you know, then there's a whole bunch of other technology that I guess will be undone. And not to mention, once you've hand counted those, you know, where would you notate them? Are we notating it on a piece of paper, or are we putting that in an Excel sheet? If we're putting it in an Excel sheet, then, you know, that's a computer, and I guess susceptible to some of the same concerns that have been mentioned by some of this group. But it is intellectually and empirically vacant, the theory.
Good. Glad to hear there are no historical roots that we overlooked. It's just a dumb idea. Yes.
And we've been using machines for
Right.
for a long time. Now, should machines be tested? Absolutely. Is the small sample size that's statistically significant, that's randomly selected to hand count audit, to go through that to make sure that the machines were working as a, yes, of course. To do all of it, it's a silly idea.
Final question, I think, unless there's something from anybody. First of all, everybody just wants to thank you over and over and over. I'm getting private messages about that. What can we do? And I know people probably always ask you this, but specifically, like, what can we do in our social circles? What can we do with our neighbors? What can we do inside our own families to help restore confidence in the system and to help you?
So thank you. I appreciate it. So encourage people to come to us is one thing that I would ask. You know, don't you saw that on Rumble, you saw that on Telegram, you saw that on Facebook, you saw that on Twitter. Well, there's a bunch of people in my office who really like elections, and even in the midst of a busy election season, we'll answer your question if you email us. So please let us be the source of clarification for any confusion that you might have. The second thing is, we need to change the culture of the culture regarding the acceptability of this ideology. I think that, you know, maybe in the Vietnam era, it was seen as socially acceptable to go up to military personnel and, you know, put the sort of the Vietnam War and their disagreements on those individuals. At some point, the culture around that changed such that whether or not we agree with a particular engagement or even like the armed forces as a broad institution, there's a measure of respect and decorum for people in the armed services, or at least not a violent opposition. We have normalized the demonization, the dehumanization, and the full-out assault on election workers. And there are people in positions of power who make apologies for others who do it, who continue to support others who do it, who might even promote those who do it. And I guess I've sort of lost confidence in those, but if people in the business community, people in polite civil society say, knock it off, I'm not going to support you. I'm not going to continue to invite you to the stinking country club or whatever it is. If you continue to do that, I think we need to make that antisocial behavior that is frowned upon, just like some things that were once acceptable in our civil society. Quite frankly, disliking Jews. Anti-Semitism used to be sort of just a thing. It was sort of, in some circles it was even fashionable. I hope now in most pockets of Arizona, if you made blatantly anti-Semitic remarks, some of your friends would say like, ew, like that's not appropriate here. And I need more people to say, ew, that's not appropriate in this context.
Well, you got an army now, so we'll absolutely do our best. I want to thank you and Justin. I know he was in the chat giving us all information. Thank you all 50 plus of you. It's so nice to spend time with people who care about our democracy. So thank you very much and good night.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Bye.
Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Anita.
Thank you.
Thank all of you. And remember to vote. Get those
Remember to
ballots in.
vote.